Hi guys, welcome to Our Body, the podcast, where I will be talking about the different issues that come from surviving sexual abuse and sexual trauma. Just as an introduction to myself, my name is Valerie Killer. I'm a third year journalism student. I'm a very normal girl. And I am also a survivor of sexual assault. I was molested, and it's been over a year since that has happened to me, and I've always wanted to kind of create a platform for survivors of sexual trauma to share their stories and empower other males and females who are experiencing the same sort of emotions that they're trying to go through and deal with. Create something that's empowering, because sometimes I think there are a lot of narratives that are based around sexual trauma survivors, and a lot of it is based off of having this kind of sympathy for them and trying to prevent it from happening again. Whereas I think the narrative should be based on actually applauding these men and women for dealing with what they dealt with, and then using their experience as a learning point. So rather than saying, let's protect these survivors and let's protect other women and men from these things happening to them, let's educate men and women from a very young age to know what's wrong and what's right. And I know it sounds very simple, but actually sometimes you'll be surprised. People don't seem to understand no. People don't seem to understand the limits or the lines of sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and all these things that come into it. Because I think sometimes you can kind of think of sexual trauma and automatically go to rape and the extreme, whereas actually it all starts from sexual harassment, touching someone in when you're in the club without their permission and seeing that they're physically uncomfortable, but you still advancing because you're doing it for your own sexual gratification, So this is kind of what I want to explore through this podcast. And obviously eventually, as this hopefully gets bigger, I'll be able to, bring in other survivors, bring in mental health experts, bring in even just someone who is curious and has questions they want to discuss without feeling like they're going to be offending someone. I think that's enough introduction. Bear with me because, like I said, this is the first episode. We've had so many technical difficulties trying to even record this, so do bear with me. But in this episode, I will be talking about body image, because I think this is probably one of the hardest things sexual trauma survivors have to face. Something you constantly have to battle, I think, as a survivor of sexual trauma, because you're not just battling yourself and your own mind, you're also trying to deal with being comfortable again around other people when it comes to how they make you feel about your body as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I think one of the main things to be aware of is that as a survivor, you kind of tend to be a lot more aware of your physical appearance and the way your physique makes other people feel as well, and how other people react towards your body. And this, I think, this is where paranoia and anxiety and depression and other symptoms of PTSD come into play. Also, I forgot to mention, if I keep looking down, it's just because my laptop's here, because I do have points that I want to make sure that I get through. It's if I keep looking down, that's why. Also, if I keep looking there, It's because of the viewfinder. I'm brand new to this. Please be kind to me. So yeah, there is definitely a lot more sensitivity to body image. And this can come out or show itself in very different ways, because obviously everyone is different. Everyone reacts to trauma differently. Everyone responds to pain or responds to depression and anxiety differently. So there isn't kind of a blanket statement that I can apply to every single survivor. Of course, there will be a lot of common things that we go through, but even so, everyone deals with it differently. I'm very thirsty. I'm gonna grab some water. 1 second. Can you tell this is my first time doing this? I promise I will get better at this. So yeah, everyone responds to trauma differently. Now, being more aware of the way people respond to your body often means that when you're outside and you're wearing something that's a little bit more revealing, you kind of unconsciously do this, subconsciously do this, but you'll sort of look around and see if anyone's looking in your direction a bit weird. And I used to do this all the time. Now, I'm someone who, I wouldn't say I dress provocatively, but, you know, I like crop tops, I like low-cut tops, I like tight clothing, like that's how I just always used to dress. And it was never really an issue for me. I never really, I guess, took notice of other people when I was dressed in that way. After I had been molested, I realised I kept noticing if men specifically were looking at me in a certain way, and I started to create all these like scenarios of what they were thinking of when they were looking at me, and it made me physically uncomfortable to even consider what was going on in their minds, and it would always make me feel like nauseous just at the thought that they could be having sexual thoughts about me right now as they're looking at me. When in fact, sometimes they might just be looking at me because they think I look weird, you know? And it's my kind of mind that's making these scenarios, which might not be true. So I was kind of inducing myself into this kind of anxious state. And because of that, I changed the way that I dressed, because I felt like if I dress in baggy clothes, if I dress in a completely different style to how I was dressed before, then maybe people will find me less attractive. Maybe men won't look at me on the street. Maybe men won't approach me. I was thinking of all these maybes, and I was really hoping that by making myself less attractive, I would then be avoiding the possibility of this happening again, of me facing some kind of sexual trauma again. And actually, you come to a realization that you can't necessarily desexualize yourself. And yes, there's people out there who dress modestly and wear oversized and baggy clothes, but they will still get approached and they will still get harassed on the streets, and there is still the possibility of them going through sexual trauma. And actually being dressed in baggy clothes or being butt-ass naked makes no difference to how people perceive your body. And I know that sounds, I feel like that will fly over people's heads, because they'll think, well, of course, if you're naked, people are going to be looking at you more, which is very easy to say. But there are plenty of women who dress modestly and don't show an inch of skin, and they will still have a story to tell. So I've always said now, especially when, I have this conversation with other people, I always say that if someone has sexual intentions towards you, they will they could act on those sexual intentions regardless of how you look, how you're dressed, how you speak, how you act. Like, that won't influence them at all. So if someone has those intentions, that is how they will respond to you, if that makes sense. So me dressing or trying to desexualize myself doesn't put me more or less at risk of being sexually abused or sexually assaulted. And yeah, that is something to bear in mind, A, as a survivor, B, as one of those people who might be saying, well, she was wearing a short skirt, or she shouldn't have had her boobs out, or she shouldn't have worn a bikini at the beach, or she shouldn't have worn a t-shirt to bed. All these things that focus on the survivor and how they were dressed and how they look is completely inappropriate. Because, like I said, desexualizing yourself won't work. It may avert attention to you in the sense that you're not as noticeable in a way, because it's not as shocking to see someone covered up than it is to see someone in short clothes, in a short skirt and a crop top, But ultimately, it doesn't mean that you're more at risk of being put in that situation. And this whole idea of desexualizing yourself and desexualizing your body doesn't just come into the way that you're dressed. It also comes in what type of lifestyle you then engage in. Because you might find that some people then become obsessive over their diet, and they might, be one of those people who count how many calories they're having a day, and they might start obsessively going to the gym, and that's kind of the way that they self-medicate or cope in a way. But then you'll have the exact opposite of that, and people who then, will eat whatever they want to eat, don't necessarily have a diet plan or aren't very conscious of what they eat, and completely avoid the gym. And I was of the latter. I've never been someone who's on gym. I'm not a gym babe. Do you know what I mean? Right now, I am in a bit of a phase of being a gym babe, but that will probably die down very soon. But I remember thinking, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym and work on a body that will be considered attractive. And so I thought that was the perfect combination. I won't go to the gym. I'll dress in super baggy clothes and no one will ever look at me. And you start to think in this way, and it starts to... Water break. You start to think in this way, and you start to obsessively think in this way. And it can become very destructive, because what you're really doing is avoiding the uncomfortable, avoiding loving your own body again and seeing your body as a beautiful thing, as opposed to something you need to hide and cover up and be super conscious of and be kind of ashamed of in a way. When in actuality, we're not the problem. We're not the problem. My body is not the problem. Being desirable, having a body that is attractive isn't the problem at all. So there's things like that, and there's things of being fearful of being overtly sexual or displaying overtly sexual behaviour. So you might find someone who was super outgoing before suddenly is all shy or closed off. Or you might find that someone has become super loud all of a sudden, and doesn't really care about how they come across to people, or, they might avoid sexual relationships or become hypersexualized and kind of use that as another coping mechanism. But it all ties down into trying to draw attention away from people sexualizing your body. And if you were listening correctly, you all know how I feel about that. Guys, honestly, my throat is so dry. I really don't know how people do this. How do people do an hour-long podcast straight? Because my throat... And I don't have much water left. So I didn't really think this through, did I? But yes. So those are kind of the ways in which survivors will subconsciously show awareness of their body image. And one thing that I really want to say is that I was mentioning earlier that if someone has sexual intentions toward you, no matter how you dress or how you act or whatever, it's not going to influence them. It's not going to distract them from their sexual thoughts or intentions about you, and it's not something that you can control, because at the end of the day, that's their thoughts. And yes, they're wrong thoughts, but that's their thoughts. The same way no one can control my thoughts because it's my head, bro. Like, you can't control what I think, you know? So the important thing is being able to assert yourself, or finding that strength to assert yourself in unwanted situations when they do arise, because that then is something that you can control. So if you are someone who, you know, feels comfortable dressed a certain way, or if, you know, you're just showing a little centimetre cleavage walking down the street and someone approaches you, you can assert yourself in that situation then. It doesn't have to be, fuck, this means I have to cover up because I'm wearing this, you know? It can be, get the fuck away from me. And actually, there's this. Oh, that's going to make far too much noise for the mic. But there's things like this that you can walk around with to make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Because I think it's quite upsetting to know that this can change the way you see yourself. And it's really sad, you know, because when I would speak to my therapist about this, he'd always say, so these are signs of avoidance. And I always used to say, I never used to be that girl who dressed in that way, and I'd always long for this sense of normality again, and feeling like my normal self, and feeling like who I was before I was molested. And I liked dressing a certain way, and it was upsetting to know that I used to be so uncomfortable with the idea of people seeing my body. And not because I felt ashamed of the way that I looked in it, but because I was so frightened of how people would respond to me dressed in that way. So, little story time. There was one specific time, also on my socials, like, you know, I always used to post like bikini pics, and I don't know, just snap pics of my body when I thought it was looking good. You know what I mean? And I stopped doing that because I was so uncomfortable with the thought of someone thinking of me a certain way. Used to literally freak me out. And there was one specific time when I was wearing my tracksuits. I was literally at uni, and I was wearing my baggy clothes. And I was like, do you know what? I'm feeling really hot in this, and I'm feeling very hot. So I took off my jumper, my hoodie, and I took a snap. And I was wearing a tank top, and it wasn't showing much, but it's a tank top at the end of the day. It's tight, shows a little bit of cleavage. and I posted like a selfie on my Snap, and literally 3 seconds later someone had messaged me saying something about my boobs, and I literally was so uncomfortable. And I remember opening it and just thinking, see, this is why I shouldn't post stuff like this, because people will respond to me in this way. And I deleted it. And I went so far as deleting all my bikini pics off my Instagram. And I didn't feel comfortable at all taking pictures like that anymore, or posting pictures like that anymore. And it was quite sad, because it turned into me blaming myself, when I shouldn't. I can't help the way that my body looks. I can't help if someone perceives my body as attractive, but I shouldn't then blame myself for the way that I look. What I'm trying to say is, we ultimately become very conscious of our body. And a lot of the time, it comes from being overly anxious, and kind of, you really notice when people stare at you. You really do. And then you start to think, what the fuck is he thinking of? Why is he looking at me in this way? Is it because of the way that I'm dressed? Maybe I shouldn't have worn this. Maybe I should have worn 6 baggy jumpers and 12 trousers so that they wouldn't see my body. And like I said, we shouldn't be ashamed of our bodies. I shouldn't be ashamed of walking out in a crop top. I shouldn't be made to feel uncomfortable when I'm dressed comfortably and I'm okay with low cut tops and crop tops and short skirts. And I should be comfortable enough to walk down the fucking street and not fear being sexually assaulted, or sexually harassed, or sexually molested, or sexually abused. I shouldn't have that fear. Women and men should not have that fear. And I shouldn't be so conscious of people reacting to my body that it starts to affect my happiness, and my mental and physical well-being. Because if I had carried on, so it was around maybe like from September to December, I'd say, or even like beginning of January, I completely avoided going to the gym. Completely avoided it, because like I said, I didn't want to have an attractive body. I just thought, I don't want to do this. I feel uncomfortable even going to the gym because there's men there and I don't want to be there. And if I had carried on in that way, soon enough my body would become very unhealthy, because I wasn't being careful of what I ate. I wasn't engaging in any sort of physical activity, wasn't going to the gym, would barely run for the bus. Like, I was very unhealthy, and I would notice how unhealthy I was becoming. But because of that fear over my own body, I just carried on in that way. So, yeah. And now there's things that we can, I suppose, do to help improve our body image. And it starts with asserting yourself in unwanted situations, which I had mentioned before. And it doesn't have to be overly like big acts of assertion, of asserting yourself. English. Of asserting yourself. It can literally be, say, for example, if someone's made a joke or like a sexual reference, ask them to explain it. If they've made a joke, say why, what was the joke, what was funny? Like, in a very serious matter, just say, what was funny? Why have you made that joke towards me? And just asking them to explain themselves, because oftentimes if you do that, they will be extremely uncomfortable with the fact that they now have to explain why they have now made a sexual reference, and they can sense that they've made you uncomfortable, but you're going to reverse the script. Do you know what I mean? Another little story time to show my little small act of asserting myself, because I was actually very proud of myself when I did this, and I spoke to my therapist about it, and he was like, that is great, you should really applaud yourself. And that's another thing as well, applaud yourself for all these little moments, because you won't be able to celebrate your progress if you don't celebrate your small successes. And like I said, it doesn't always have to be these big things that you do that show you've asserted yourself, or show that you've healed, or showed that you are able to cope with sexual trauma. Like, it can literally be the small things, and applauding yourself for that and making a note of it even, so you can then look back and think, fuck, I did all that, you know? So funny enough, it was the same guy, right, who had made a reference to a joke to my boobs when I had posted that snap. And this was a couple months ago now, maybe like 3 months ago. I think it was just towards the end of first lockdown. And I had posted a bikini pic. And he had said something. He had said to me, you know, I really appreciate you like showing your boobs on Snap. Like, I really needed that. I really needed to see your boobs. And I literally was like, why the fuck would you say that to me? Why the fuck would you say that to anyone? Like, that is disgusting. That is literally disgusting. And that's what I said to him. I was like, don't ever fucking speak to me like that, or any person ever again, because it's vile. Like, who the fuck says that? Thanks for showing your boobs. I really needed to see your boobs. Bro, I didn't even know you. And even if I did, that's still not okay. Sorry, I'm looking at like the audio level, and it was just at red then, so I need to turn it down a bit. But it's not okay. And then he started to apologize and say, I thought it would be funny, I'm so sorry, I wasn't really thinking. And I was like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Like, surely before you press send, you can read that to yourself and think, hold on, wait a minute, that's not okay. Do you know what I mean? Surely people have enough common sense, but they don't. They really don't. People don't have common sense. People don't have this kind of logic, clearly. And then I blocked him. And I just remember feeling so proud of myself for doing that, because I would not have done that if he had said that to me a couple months before that. I probably would have cried, and I probably would have, you know, gone back into hiding my body again and reverting back to those unhealthy thoughts about my own body, and trying to desexualize myself again, and thinking that, fuck, this is why I shouldn't dress in this way, you know? So there's things like that. Literally celebrate small acts of asserting yourself. It doesn't have to be you outwardly saying no. It could literally be you asking why, asking questions, you know, removing yourself, literally just walking out of the room. If you're, I don't know, in class and someone has said something, just walk out. Do you know what I mean? And it will take time. Like, you have to bear in mind, that was literally 3 months ago. Like 3 months ago, when I was actually able to fully do that and feel like I had accomplished something. So these things take time. It's not about rushing to get back into that, your normal body image again. And there's also things like limiting your time on social media, limiting your time on places or on platforms where you start to I don't know, my voice is shaking. It's just because my throat's dry. I'm not about to cry on this podcast. But limiting your time on social media, because I also read that, you know, people or survivors can compare themselves to other people's bodies, which I never went through personally, but that can also feed into, negative thoughts about your own body and insecurities, because you might start to think, why did I have to go through that? So limiting your time on platforms, limiting your time with people who make you or who encourage those negative thoughts can definitely help improve your body image. And finding places where you're able to comfortably express your body image and express body positivity, and surrounding yourself with people who make you feel comfortable in your own skin, where you don't have to feel like, where you don't have to feel very conscious of how your body looks, where you don't have to feel conscious about what they could be thinking about you and things like that. And so yeah, that kind of draws into my other point here with surrounding yourself with really positive and supportive people, because that is one of the main things. Like, if I did not have, because at first it was my best friend that I had told, and if I did not have her around me, I would have given up a very long time ago, because she was just there to mentally support me on my good days, but most importantly on my bad days, where I felt like I was just regressing into my depressive state again. And it could be it could literally be your best friend, it could be your parents, it could be other members of your family, it could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, whoever it may be, but just finding someone to talk to, someone supportive to talk to, and someone positive to talk to. Because obviously it's not going to help if you speak to someone who in every kind of way tries to blame you or speaks badly about your body, because that's not going to help. And then also being able to identify positive qualities you value in yourself, because it is good and all having a great support system, but you also need to be able to learn to love your body again, and just feel comfortable looking at your body, feeling your body, and comfortable with the idea of your body in public, So have a little journal, make a little list of just things you love about yourself and appreciate and value, because those constant reminders will really help, just to kind of uplift yourself. And the other things kind of refer to when you notice that you're engaging in unhealthy habits. You can start to engage in daily exercise, even if that literally means walking up and down your street for 5 minutes, just kind of getting yourself there. Because I don't know about you, but whenever I go to the gym and I really don't want to go, I'll say, okay, I'll just go for half an hour. And then once I'm there, because I'm in it and I'm there, I'll just end up going for a bit longer. So literally just start by walking up your stairs, even walking up and down your stairs for 5 minutes, and practicing self-care. Now, it doesn't have to be through the gym. It doesn't have to be through exercise. It can be through painting, through singing, through, poetry. Make it a point to do something that you genuinely enjoy and can have a clear mind doing. So it could just be listening to music, or whatever it may be that I feel like gives you that sense of peace, where you don't really have to think of anything while you're doing it. You don't have to have any deep thoughts in your head while you're doing it. Just something that you genuinely enjoy. And it can be through other kind of mindfulness exercises like yoga or finding something or re-finding something you're passionate about, or maybe even going to church if you're someone who is religious or wants to start being a bit more religious. But just practice valuing your body again, because our body is beautiful. Just to kind of end this on a nice motivational, positive note, regaining positive body image happens over time. And there will be times where you feel like you've got this and you're really heading somewhere, and, you know, something might trigger you and you feel like you're spiraling back down. But it's important to always remember, especially in those times, that this will take time. It might even take you until you're 90 years old. And that's fine. But there will come a point when, you know, you're able to perceive it for what it is. And that is literally the fact that our bodies, yes, they're beautiful, yes, they're desirable, yes, they're attractive, and yes, they can be sexualized, but that by no means does that mean that it's okay to be violated. By no means does it mean that it's okay to go through, to have to go through sexual trauma or sexual abuse or sexual assault or all these forms of sexual violence. And having a body that is attractive, having a body that is desired, having a body that you're proud of having is not a crime. It's not something to feel ashamed of. It's not something you have to feel guilty towards, because we should celebrate our body. You know, our body is here to literally support us, and our body does such amazing things for us, things that we don't even understand the process of, but it's doing all that, and we should appreciate our body and never, ever, ever feel ashamed of it. So that is all for the very first episode. I'm sorry if it was a bit all over the place. I have had to keep stopping the recording every 20 minutes because I'm using the camera that we get from uni. But yeah, if you, I don't know, if you are a survivor yourself and you are comfortable enough to speak on your own story or want to discuss something with me, here with me as well, because, you know, I got space, then please do contact me. I will leave my social media down below. It is mainly just my Instagram because that's on public, so you guys can just literally message me on there. Or, I don't know, if you want to have any kind of discussion with me or want to join me on the next episode, please do let me know. Because I definitely want this to grow and turn into something that we can all be very proud of. And yeah, I will try my very best to be a little bit more technically better for the next episode. But I do hope that you have enjoyed listening to me and have taken something away from this and are able to have discussions about this with other people. And yeah, thank you guys for watching and for listening, and let me know what you'd like me to talk about next. I kind of have an idea of each topic that I do want to discuss, but of course I might not have covered everything. So let me know. And yeah, that is it for this podcast. Thank you. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. All right, that is the end. I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.